What is going on, guys? Back with another video. So for today, we're actually taking a stock VFC MP5 and then turning it into a CQB monster. We're putting in a Polarstar and a whole bunch of other cool stuff. So this is kind of what we're working with. Got all my tools out. We're going to be taking this stock gun and then putting a Polarstar F2 in. We're going to be putting red dots, foregrips, rails, flashlights, barrel, rail on the top, like everything you could possibly do this gun, and we're going to mod it out. And then in the spirit of this submachine gun video, we're actually giving away a fully automatic gas blowback MP5. This thing comes with 4 separate working mags. This gun works very good. There's little actually wear and tear on this gun too. It's a very new condition. And I added a cool little mag pull front grip. And anyone can actually win this gun. It's free to enter and anyone can enter. I'm going to be announcing how you guys can actually win and enter into getting this awesome gas blowback MP5 at the end of the video, so make sure to watch the whole thing, and I'll let you guys know how you can enter at the end of the video. Alright, so first up, we're actually going to hook this thing up with a magazine full of BBs and then a battery, and we're going to see kind of the stock results of the semi-automatic and the full auto capabilities with just a stock gun. Alright, let's take a look at the stock performance of the VFC MP5 A4. This is semi. Full auto. Alright, now let's check the actual trigger response. I'm actually using a 11.1 volt 30C battery for this test. So this is going to be semi-automatic. So not too bad, but not as fast as we want it. We're going to make this thing shoot extremely faster. At the end of this video, we're going to do another shooting test and compare the stock results versus the upgraded Polarstar results. Alright guys, we have a lot of fun externals and internals to install on this gun. First, we're actually going to start with the most difficult thing, and that would be to install the F2 engine into the gearbox. So let's start with that. Alright, so first up, we're actually going to be taking out the body pins and then the stock pin too. So I guess the easiest part is to just do the stock pin first. So basically, obviously it's really easy. These don't even require a punch pin or anything like that. Make sure before you actually start doing something like this, make sure to take your pens and stuff and put them somewhere safe, because you don't want to lose that. So after you get that out, simply just pull off the stock, nice and easy. And then this is where the battery compartment is actually in the stock, and then a little bit on the top. I have actually rewired this to Dean's so I could use it to play, because all my batteries are Dean's, but for this video obviously it doesn't really matter too much, because we're going to be taking out the stock, MOSFET and stuff, the inline MOSFET, and replacing it with the F2. And we could also obviously get rid of these pens, that one in the front, and then this handguard should just come right off pretty easy. I'm guessing to put the new one on, it'd be similar, just kind of pop it on, no modifications needed. You can even put the pens back on the handguard so you don't lose it and you know what it goes to. And then we got this pin in the middle of the body, or just to the right of the mag release. Alright, so now kind of slowly, okay, that wasn't very slow, but slowly take it out so you don't ruin anything. We're trying to get the lower and upper obviously separated. Alright, so basically what you want to do to get the lower and upper disassembled is you want to try to get this tab as far as up as possible. So obviously there's like the selector plate in here and stuff, so you want to kind of go over top of that, and then once it's kind of to the end, you can just pull it right off. So obviously putting the new barrel in wouldn't be that hard, but we're going to actually save that for later. We're actually going to be installing the engine first. Alright, so next up, we're actually going to be taking this little screw out the back right here. And then there's also going to be a little screw down here too to screw off. You're going to need to do that, and then the little black thing should come off. Alright, next up, we could take off the actual spring guide, but we're going to take off the motor grip plate, and then the motor, and then the actual grip itself. Alright, we actually got the motor plate off with a lot of struggle. These actually didn't have the right Allen wrench, so I just ended up dremeling the actual screws out to actually get this out. Obviously, if you're doing a SSG or DSG build or any kind of upgrades in the gearbox, and you plan on reusing the gearbox, obviously you do not want to do this, but since we are just getting rid of the motor plate anyway, and we're running a hose down here, it doesn't really matter. Alright, next up, obviously we got the wires disconnected from the motor tabs, and then we're just going to take out the actual motor itself, like so. And then down in actually the motor grip, there's going to be 2 more screws you're going to have to undo to separate the lower and the gearbox. Alright, so once you get those screws undone, just kind of put the selector in a good position, maybe between semi and auto, and then just kind of take out the gearbox slowly. Next up, obviously we don't going to need the motor, so you can put that aside, not a big deal. But we are going to need to do is actually start taking out all of these individual screws from the gearbox to get inside. One thing we can actually do before we start getting the screws out, I've already taken one out, but I just remembered, this is actually a quick change spring guide, so we can take this out so when we actually take the gearbox shell apart, it actually won't spring and hit something. So to do that, I'm just going to be taking any kind of tool and just try to turn it 90 degrees, and then it should pop out for you, like so. Now the gearbox is decompressed, so we don't have to worry about the spring jumping out when we actually take it apart. Alright, once all these screws are undone, we can actually just take the gearbox out like that. So we're going to be installing next the F2, but basically for this gearbox, you only really need to worry about the safety latch and pretty much everything else, obviously the trigger and the screw for the actual electronics themselves, so you can actually put the F2 board in there. But as far as, the compression, all this stuff, obviously you're not going to need any of this stuff. Just put that aside, and if you want to do, another build later, you can obviously do that. But for now, I'm just going to take all the gears, the compression, electronics, etc., and put them aside so we can get enough room for our F2. Another thing too, I'm not going to do an extensive wipe down of the gearbox because it is really stock and not used very much, but I'm just going to be taking a microfiber towel and just kind of wiping it down so there's not unnecessary grease or anything like that in there. You're going to want to save the trigger and the trigger spring, very important. And then obviously pretty much everything else you could take out. Make sure not to lose this screw right here, the one right on the electronic board. And then also we're going to be keeping the safety latch and selector plate. Obviously these bearings, you don't need them in the gearbox, but it just takes time to remove them and the weight is so minimal, I'm not going to even bother removing them. And also if I want to return to a stock build for whatever reason, I can have these already installed. You want to check and make sure the selector plate that hits the actual board button on the F2 board is, there's no bumps or anything like that, because the little tiny board on the F2 is super small and easy to break. So as long as, the selector plate is obviously smooth and doesn't have any damage, you should be fine. Alright, so now we get to unbox our Polarstar F2. I actually haven't had a Polarstar built in quite a long time. I'm really excited because I think this is one of their new best systems, and I want to do a MP5 build for a while, so this is going to be kind of a cool build. I'm super excited to play with. So obviously you got the actual wiring harness, the actual hose, and then the F2 unit in there, and there should be some more wiring, I believe. Actually, okay, so yeah, here's like the poppet and nozzle, I think, wiring that goes into the board, a FCU that comes in there too, which is pretty cool. It's like basically a mini computer for your HPA guns. It kind of lets you control the FPS, like the nozzle, timing, and a whole bunch of other cool stuff. So that's really cool, and you don't really get something like that with AGs unless you have a upgraded, gate MOSFET or a Spectre or a Chimera or something like that. All right, so one thing we're actually going to have to do aside from an install is actually replace the actual nozzle with a new one for this particular build. We're just going to twist this off. We don't really need to mess with anything. We're just going to be taking the nozzle out of here. And then obviously this one has a little bit of grease on it, so we kind of want to copy what they're doing from the factory as they know best. They don't really put a lot, but just a little bit around there is good. So we're going to take our new nozzle out of the packaging. If you guys are wanting to do this build, this is a KAC LMG Classic Army number 11 nozzle. I was told by Polarstar this is the one that will work in this gun. So we don't want to do anything too excessive. We're just going to be taking a little bit and putting it around on that O-ring and just around a little bit on the end there. Kind of just copying what they had from the factory. Just kind of slide it on in. Alright. Then make sure not to mess up anything and just screw it back on pretty easy. Alrighty, so our next step, we're actually going to be taking the board, the F2 board, and installing it into the gearbox. So what we're going to need to do is just pretty much slide it in here like so. Pretty simple. Alright, so we're going to be taking obviously the screw from the stock inline MOSFET, and then we're going to be installing it into the board. If it's incorrectly placed, you don't want to, break anything, so just kind of slowly put it in and make sure everything's flush with the gearbox, and everything's good to go. It looks like it's installed flush with the gearbox. That looks good. And then do our last little tighten here. Not too tight, you don't want to break anything again, so just a little tighten. Perfect. Alright, next thing we could do is just simply take the F2 unit. I got the EMG version, and I'm pretty sure it's like a $5 difference. The only reason I got this one and paid the extra money was obviously the other one were out of stock, so I just obviously had to get the EMG. But I think it was only $5 extra, so I don't think it's that big of a deal. I want to untangle these little wires. One of these I think goes to the nozzle. The J2 and the J3 are what we're going to be plugging these two into, and then obviously the wiring harness is going to go into this one, and that's going to go back throughout the gun, and then that's going to plug into our FCU, and then our battery is going to plug into the FCU, and then it'll all work. But first off, we need to untwist these little guys and find out which one they go to. So I found out that the bottom one that's marked with the black marking is actually the poppet one, which goes into J2, which is the one on the top part of the board that's not the wiring harness. So basically, bottom one goes into the top, which is J2, and it's also marked black as well, so that helps. Alright, perfect. And then we're also going to have to put the upper part, which is, I think, controls the nozzle, into J3, which is the lower one. Alright, one thing I actually forgot, we're actually going to want to put this guy in. This is the little hose that connects to the F2 and then goes into the motor grip. Everything's installed, looks good to go. One thing we're actually going to have to do is we're going to have to put this quick change spring in, but it's actually a little bit too long, so we're actually going to have to Dremel about a quarter of this off or a third of this off so that it'll actually fit in the gearbox without hitting any of these wiring back here. Right, guys, so we had and cut this off with a Dremel and then took some sandpaper and then just sanded it down to make sure it's not like super sharp or anything like that, so now it's all good. So then we're going to need this to put it back into reassemble the gun, so we'll just put that to the side. But as you can see, now when I put it in, it obviously has plenty of room before it hits the F2 wiring, so that is perfect. Next up, we're actually going to be taking the harness, installing that, and then rewiring it through the back where it was previously wired. So then the harness goes on this big one on the top, J1. Flathead always helps to push it in a little bit. Alright, so last but not least, we're going to be installing the trigger back into the gearbox. Make sure to put the trigger spring back in too. Alright, so everything looks to be in place. Make sure you don't pinch any of the wires, and then we're going to be putting the gearbox shell back together, like so. Alright, now that we have the top on, just simply start installing these screws again, and then I'll see you guys once these are all installed. Probably on some of these, you have to make sure it's not moving, so if you take the engine in the gearbox when it's all secured and it's moving, you're going to want to add some like metal tape shims around on the front of the engine so it's actually held more compressed. So before we actually install this, we want to make sure it actually works 100%. So we're actually be plugging in the FCU and a battery and seeing if the solenoids actually shoot. Alright, as you can see, it works. Sweet. Alright, now we're going to start installing this into the body. Make sure the hose obviously goes where the motor grip was supposed to go, and the trigger slides into the trigger place. Alright, there we go. First step, we're going to actually be installing these screws back into the body again. Alright guys, so our next step is installing that quick change spring guide. It's going to be a little weird without the spring, just kind of sitting there. Obviously make sure to turn it the 90 degrees so the fins line up with the gearbox. And then we're going to be installing this little black piece at the end as well. And then I'll let you guys know when all that's done. Alright, so we got this black part in. Obviously the screw on the top and on the bottom is in. So this is ready to go. Actually, we're going to be switching over to the upper now and then installing our new barrel. Alright, first thing, we're going to take this little piece out. You just kind of take anything, kind of like a flathead, or even twist the barrel and try to get it off. Slowly, we're going to take this out. And then this is your bucking. We're actually be keeping the stock bucking, so let's throw that on the new barrel. This is a EG barrel by Prometheus. Obviously, it's a 208mm, which will fit perfectly in our MP5. So we're going to go ahead and clean this barrel out before we actually install it. And then we're just going to be putting the bucking on this one, as well as the little clip that comes on the barrel right here. And then just installing that back in our VFC hop-up. To clean the barrel, I actually just put some like a piece of microfiber towel on the end of a cleaning rod and then just ran it through the barrel a couple times, and now it's looking perfect and ready to go. Make sure this little line or groove on the end of the barrel actually lines up with the groove inside the bucking and should be good to go. Make sure the little line here on that barrel is actually lined up with the bottom of the hop-up. Just go in nice and easy. Make sure that's pushed in. And then last but not least, got to put your little barrel chip on here. All installed, make sure to put this spring back in, and then we can go ahead and put that in our upper. So once you slide on the upper and lower, make sure to put the pin back. And then obviously, no gas, no battery, anything. I'm actually going to look at the alignment with a flashlight to the end of the barrel to make sure it's all lined up. So actually one thing I noticed I thought I would note, I don't think this is going to be the case for everyone, but in my case, the nozzle is actually aligned with the gearbox itself, but when I put it actually into the upper receiver and I look down the barrel, obviously no battery, no gas or anything like that. And if this little nozzle is actually unaligned, what I did is actually put some of this kind of like Velcro, like adhesive on the side of the gearbox, and when I put the upper on the lower, it makes the nozzle actually align. So I thought that'd be a cool tip if you're having alignment issues. Feel free to put something like this on. This is kind of just like a Velcro patch. Obviously it sticks to the gearbox, and it's just a little bit enough room for it to actually hug this side a little bit more to correct the nozzle alignment. Another thing I forgot to mention as well is, for whatever reason, my actual engine kind of boxing, it didn't actually come with one of these to actually plug in the engine, which is, I don't know why that wouldn't come with it, but I did just steal this from my Polarstar MP5, so I'm not sure if all F2s don't come with this or if I just got unlucky, so let me know in the comments below if you have an F2 if it came with this little part. Alright guys, next up on the build, we're actually going to take the Midwest rail and put it on our MP5. Sweet. Alright. Alright guys, there's the Midwest rail looking pretty cool. Alright, next up we're going to put this little rail on the top of the gun, and then we're going to put all the attachments on. Alright, so we got the top rail assembled, and we also got this offset key mod section to go on the rail so we can mount a flashlight. Okay, next up we're going to be putting on our Magpul MVG grip. I'm going to go install this, and I'll show you guys what it looks like when it's done. Alright, so we got the grip on nice and solid. It's starting to look pretty cool on the front side. Alright, now let's install our red dot sight on the top. For the red dot, we actually chose a Hollow Sun. These are pretty pricey, but they're definitely worth it if you're just going to have a single red dot in the long run. Cool. Got the flashlight on too. Obviously the pressure switch isn't really set up yet, but it's starting to look pretty cool. And then the red dot is on too. Looks pretty cool. I'm going to go ahead and throw on all the extra parts too, and then get this thing ready to shoot, and let's do a final shooting test to see the difference. Alright guys, here is the final product. We installed the rail on the top, handguard rail, the front grip, flashlight, suppressor, the red dot sight, and obviously the engine and the barrel. Looking pretty cool. Obviously it's kind of annoying having this little orange piece in the middle, but I'll live with that. It does look really cool, way better than it did stock. Alright, so we got the gun fully together. Let's do some shooting tests. We're going to start with the FCU factory RPS, which is 18, and then we'll work our way up to like a field limit, which is like 25 for example, and then we'll actually go to like a realistic max for the mag, so maybe like 40, 50, and we'll see how it shoots. So first up we got full auto. This is just 18 RPS. Cool thing about this is you can adjust all of the settings on the FCU. So for an example, if I wanted to adjust the RPS, just go to that setting, which is the RF button, and so I could do like 24 RPS, 23, all the way up, and so I'm going to do 25 next, so let's see how that sounds. Crank this baby up. Let's try to do 35, and then we'll go all the way to like 45, 50. Alright, 35 is up next. Pretty cool. Next up, we'll just go straight to 50. I think that's kind of a fun number, so we'll go to that. And then we'll see what the max is. I don't know if there's a max on here. Obviously, I don't think you can feed more than 50 or 40, but we'll do 50 real quick, see how that sounds. Alright, so for whatever reason, I don't know if I got a like lemon. I'm having some trouble kind of having the semi and auto kind of working together. I have to either set the FCU to only shoot auto or only shoot semi. I think the board is actually a little broken when I got it from the factory. So this is going to be a semi response if I actually put it on the FCU mode. I think normally it would normally be faster than this, but since it's not letting me actually do proper semi and auto together, I think it's a little bit slower, but this is basically the gist of it. So obviously I could shoot faster than that. So I think I could shoot faster than that, but that is the FCU restricting us to that semi. I think it's the setting for the kind of like lock semi settings, but normally there'd be a semi mode and auto mode, but I think there's something wrong with the board. I'll have to call Polarstar and make sure it's not a lemon. So that is the shooting test. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the gun to actually feed properly. I've tried different magazines, different buckings, etc., but basically what we're going to be doing is putting this thing all together to its final build and doing a cinematic video to end the video off. Hope you guys enjoy that. Alright guys, thank you guys so much for making it to the end of the video. I'm just finishing up editing this whole video. It took me a couple weeks to make this one, so if you guys like the video, that would help out greatly. I bet you guys are curious, if you do actually want to win the gas blowback UMP45, all you guys actually have to do is, again, just like the video and share it with your friends. And then if you send me proof through my Instagram will be the top link in the description. Again, if you send me proof, like a screenshot or a picture on your desktop or anything like that, if you send me proof, someone will be randomly chosen to actually win the gun. I have a whole bunch of giveaways. Actually, the past month or so, I've been accumulating a whole bunch of giveaways, and hopefully in the next few days I'm going to be actually announcing all of the winners for like a whole bunch of different guns. I think almost like 8-ish guns. So if you guys are entered in one of those past giveaways for all the videos in about a month, I'm going to be announcing all the winners in a few days, so don't miss out. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. I do a whole bunch of free giveaways, and with that guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to turn on post notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next one.